Today we begin looking around the AL West with the Oakland Athletics. Just how bad are they? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Mariners. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So the answer to the question that I posed there is very, very bad. We'll get into that here in just a moment. It is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description below. On today's show, we're going to start our AL West preview series with the Oakland Athletics, as I mentioned at the top. We're going to look at what they did this offseason, what their roster looks like as a whole, and what we expect to see from them this year. So let's start with the biggest move that they made this offseason, Colby. They traded Sean Murphy to the Atlanta Braves as part of a 3-team deal with the Milwaukee Brewers. They also sent right-handed reliever Joel Payamps to the Brewers and that deal. The Brewers, of course, acquired William Contreras, and the A's acquired catcher Manny Pena, Kyle Muller, Freddie Tarnok, and Royber Salinas from Atlanta, as well as outfield prospect Esteury Ruiz from Milwaukee. So yeah, this is a big deal. I mean, like they traded essentially a top 5, top 6 player at one of the most premium positions in the game. The A's got even worse somehow than they already were coming out of this past season, in which they finished dead last in the AL West. They were, of course, one of the worst teams in all of professional baseball. So we didn't really talk about the Murphy deal on this show. I think we talked about it a little bit on our Patreon show when it happened. Patreon.com/Control the Zone, by the way. So what do you think about the deal for Murphy? Did they get enough for Murphy?
No. I mean, no, they didn't. The thing I remember most about that Murphy deal is somehow Milwaukee got the best part of that deal.
Right. Yeah.
Which weird, but no, they didn't. But it's also not that big of a surprise because, one of the things that we talk about with Oakland when we talk about, potentially trading for some of their players every single year is that they sometimes do bulk deals, and they sometimes value guys who are closer to the big leagues than they do guys who are higher upside. So they're kind of a weird organization. Ruiz is interesting. Like, he's certainly interesting. And Muller at one point in time was, this very highly rated prospect, and Tarnok certainly has some stuff. Like, it's not like they got nothing for their best player. It's just that they didn't get a lot. Very little in star. None of the guys they got are going to be stars. Like, let's just put it like that.
Yeah.
So they traded a star, and they didn't get anybody with star upside. Now you could trade a star, and if you get, 2 3-win guys and a 2-win guy, and kind of like a 1.5 win guy, like, fine. Like, it's possible. It's just unlikely, and I don't think Oakland did really anything to speed up their timeline, quite frankly, because they traded, what was it, 3 years of Murphy? 2 years of Murphy?
I believe 3 years. The thing for me with this deal is that it really didn't make sense for anyone except for Milwaukee, right?
I agree with you that Milwaukee.
Yeah, Milwaukee got William Contreras, who was really good this past season,
for Manny Pena.
For Manny Pena and Esteury Ruiz, right?
Yeah.
Did I miss anyone that Milwaukee sent in this deal?
No,
I don't think so.
I think that was it.
That's crazy. Yeah. So, and then, like, from the Braves perspective as well, like, you have Darno and you had William Contreras. Why are you trading for Sean Murphy? That was the most mind-boggling trade of the whole offseason for me. And yeah, the A's, like, they got 50 cents on the dollar for Sean Murphy, who, again, especially in a barren wasteland of a catcher market this offseason, like, where really they held almost a monopoly, really, with Sean Murphy this offseason, and they didn't execute that very well, in my opinion. That was a rough trade for them.
No. Yeah. There's kind of an old saying, they either think they know more than everybody else, or they do know more than everybody else. And either way, they're right. So it seems at this point, Oakland, like David Forst, like nothing's going to happen that he's going to lose his job. Like
Mhm.
it's not a very appealing job to begin with. So, but yeah, that was a bad trade. Like
Yeah.
I don't think they got as much as they could for those guys. I think this has the potential to be another Josh Donaldson trade for them, where you remember they traded Donaldson for a lot of bulk and a lot of
Mhm.
MLB ready guys like Brett Lowry, and that
Yeah.
just did not work at all.
Mhm.
But
No.
we'll see. They certainly gained a lot of years of club control in the deal, but it for me they came up short on what they should have gotten for a guy who was the best catcher available, and there was really only one really good catcher available in free agency even, and that was Contreras.
Right.
So I just think they came up short.
So Murphy, I believe, had 3 years left of club control when the deal happened, but he ended up signing a 6-year, $73 million extension with the Braves. Fantastic deal for Atlanta there. That locks him up through 2029, and that's a club option for 2029 as well. So that's just another home run of a deal for the Braves and for Alex Anthopoulos. So all right, so the rest of the offseason for the A's was weird. They were pretty active in free agency, on the back end of free agency. They added Jace Peterson, who I believe was like a 2-win player last year, for the Brewers. Jesus Aguilar, who's known as a great clubhouse guy, veteran that they're going to have there to help with some of the young guys there. They ended up trading AJ Puck, one of their better relievers, left-handed reliever, to the Marlins for former top 5 pick JJ Bleday. He's probably going to be their opening day left fielder. And then, they added Aledmys Diaz from the Astros in free agency as well. And then they added a really interesting pitcher, actually a couple of interesting pitchers. The one, though, Shintaro Fujinami out of Japan. He's slotted to be near the top of their rotation after Paul Blackburn. And then they added Drew Wachinski out of the KBO, had a pretty good run in the KBO, but he's 34 years old. I believe the Mariners were even rumored to at least kick the tires on Wachinski this offseason, but he ends up going to Oakland. And they also added Trevor May, who we've talked about a lot for the Mariners in previous off seasons. So he's probably their highest leverage guy out of their bullpen entering the season, which not great considering what May's done over the last couple of years and the injuries that he's dealt with. So what do you think about their offseason as a whole?
I think there were times where it looked like they were just spending money to say they spent money. And when I say spend money, I mean giving guys like $8 million a year. So
they spent $40 million in total this offseason.
And I actually think they did a decent job in free agency. I mean, May is certainly a guy who could bounce back and be a nice trade chip. Peterson is a guy, if he's, a 2.5-win player again, like he was in Milwaukee last year, that's an attractive trade chip. Aledmys Diaz is a guy who can kind of play all over, hits lefties very well. That's an attractive trade chip. So I think they did a pretty good job of going out there and getting guys who they don't want to be Oakland A's on August 1st or whenever the trade deadline is this year. But I actually think, they went out and they lengthened their lineup, albeit not with great, not with great players. But this is a team that last year was 30th in baseball in average, 30th in on base, 30th in OPS, 29th in runs, 27th in home runs. There was a lot of holes in this lineup, and they went out and they got at least major league quality guys to slide into this lineup. So they didn't get significantly better, I don't think, but I think they got better overall. And I like the signings they made. I think they all make a lot of sense for a rebuilding team. If the idea is, let's see what we can get for these guys in late July.
Right. And we'll talk about that more, maybe some guys that might appeal to the Mariners in July when they're looking to add at the deadline. Go over that in just a little bit, as well as looking at the A's roster overall and looking at some, how we feel that they're going to do this season in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Before we get back into previewing the Oakland Athletics for the 2023 Major League season, a reminder, we are doing a giveaway. We are giving away 2 main level tickets to any of the Mariners value game series over the next 2 months, so either April or May. You choose if you win, whichever game, whichever series you want to go to, and I will buy you and a friend or family member 2 tickets to sit main level and watch the Mariners go up against, say, the Brewers or the Rangers or the Angels or the Athletics. So let us know which one you would like to go to, which team you would like to see down in the comments below, because you have to leave a comment on one of our videos or all of our videos that are coming out this week in order for you to enter, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. So get that done. If you haven't already, little subscribe button is right below our dumb little faces. All right. So yes, you. Yeah, I'm talking about you. Yes, you. All right. So let's look at this A's roster overall. It is, in the words of Anthony Fantano, not good. It is not good at all. Let's just go over some of these names that are right now projected to be in the A's lineup. This is their projected lineup against right-handed pitchers according to Fangraphs roster resource. Tony Kemp, Ramon Laureano, Seth Brown, Jesus Aguilar, Jace Peterson, Shea Langeliers, JJ Bleday, Nick Allen, Esteury Ruiz. Yeah, not great. Their rotation: Paul Blackburn, Shintaro Fujinami, James Caprillion, Drew Rachensky, Ken Waldachuk, who, of course, they acquired in the Frankie Montas deal. That deal's actually looking pretty good for the A's. That's probably one of their better deals here as of late, with Montas injured again. But yeah, let's go through their bullpen as well here real quick. Trevor May, as we mentioned earlier, Zach Jackson, Danny Jimenez, Domingo Acevedo, who, of course, is the man that Cal Raleigh took to Dongtown to end the drought. Sam Moll, Chad Smith. Yeah, it was him.
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah. And Adam Aller. And then their bench looking like Manny Pena, Ryan Noda, Aledmus Diaz, and Christian Pache, who was god-awful at the plate last year. So what do you think about this team overall, just as it's projected by Fangraphs?
First of all, guys, if you would permit me for 1 second, I need to tell Ty something that's not Mariners related, but I'm not going to have it hijack the show. So Don't worry. I'm going to say one sentence. You guys can see Ty's reaction after I say this to see as he pieces it together. The era of the 2 Genos is not going to end in 2023. In fact, unless Geno Suarez gets traded, it will not end in 2024 either.
I just checked my DMs.
There you go. So back.
Let's go.
Back to baseball. For those of you who don't, we will talk about what I just.
By the way, we're recording this on Monday, just for those of you that. Yeah.
Recording ahead of time. So if you guys want to hear our thoughts on what I just teased, if you know what I'm teasing, we will obviously be talking about that on our Patreon show, patreon.com/control the zone. Anyways,
just gonna hold this up here. I heard that I need more Seattle memorabilia on the screen anyway. So here you go.
There we go. Anyways, so yeah, I look at this lineup and I don't think Oakland's going to embarrass themselves this year. This to me doesn't look like 100-loss team. Now, it could if they go out and they trade some of these guys, which I think they're probably going to. But I look at this team and I say, Tony Kemp, he's okay. Certainly better against the Mariners than he is against anybody else, but he's okay. Ramon Laureano, there's some, we know who Laureano is at this point. Seth Brown was one of the best hitters in all of baseball in the second half of last year.
Right.
Like he was insanely good. Jesus Aguilar, coming off of a bad year, but overall usually pretty solid. Jace Peterson, done it once. We'll see. Shea Langeliers is huge upside. I really like Langeliers. He hits the ball hard, but there's a lot of work to be done there. And in the bottom half of the lineup, it's mostly defensive guys. Blade, Nick Allen, who's the guy I really like coming out of high school when he was drafted. But he's a great defensive shortstop. And that's the other thing too, is that I think the defense is actually going to be decent, which is not usually an Oakland A staple, but Nick Allen's a very good defender. My understanding is that Ruiz is a good defender. Jace Peterson's a pretty good defender. Laureano, he throws hard. I'll say that. But I actually, the thing that actually keeps me from saying this roster is going to be bad, I actually think Oakland can pitch a little.
A little bit.
I don't think by any stretch they're going to be like top 15, but I don't think they're going to be bottom 5. I like Waldichuk quite a lot. Blackburn, he's like a number 4, number 5. Very much a Chris Flexen type. And then Caprillion is a guy who I'm waiting for him to take another step. Maybe I
don't think it's happening. I think the train has left the station.
You're probably right, but for some reason, I'm going to give him one more year. And then the bullpen, May, Jackson, Jimenez, Acevedo, Mole, JP Sears. There's some guys who can get out. So I think they're going to be. I think the pitching staff's going to be okay. Not good, but okay. And then the lineup, we'll see, because there's a very easy script to write where this is the worst lineup in baseball. Because Peterson doesn't repeat, Aguilar's actually cooked, Laureano doesn't find his footing, Langeliers needs another year, Allen, Ruiz, Blade, they're all essentially rookies who just don't produce.
Right.
I think there's a script here where this is the worst lineup in baseball. I just find it hard to believe that this is going to be the worst pitching staff in baseball. So while I don't think Oakland is set up for success in 2023, I actually don't think they're going to be god awful, if that makes sense. But I do think the pitching is interesting. I'll say it's interesting. I don't want to say it's good or bad, but I find myself intrigued by what Oakland's going to throw out there on the mound this year.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm intrigued by guys like Fujinami.
Yeah.
And Blackburn, like you said, is a solid starter.
He's flexing.
He could be like a number 3, at most.
If everything breaks right, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he was even vying for an All-Star berth, at which of course speaks more.
Says more about
Oakland.
Yeah.
But still, he's been solid at times. But yeah, this lineup, it's rough. It's really rough, and I mean, Seth Brown is the shining star of it. But he might end up getting traded at some point.
He's probably getting traded.
Yeah.
And I mean, Oakland's got some interesting prospects too that are gonna.
Yeah, they got some interesting prospects.
Soderstrom's probably gonna make his debut this year. Waldichuk already has. Medina is really interesting.
And there's this young outfielder, Lawrence Butler, who's been having a pretty good spring. And he could steal some bags, play good defense. Good hit
got
tool.
Some pop.
So he's probably someone that we're going to see at some point this year. But looking at the A's top prospects here by Fangraphs, Luis Medina, Kim Waldichuk, Tyler Soderstrom, that's their top 3. Gunnar Hoagland, Zach Geloff, Daniel Susak, Ryan Cusick, JT Ginn.
They got some arms.
None of those guys that I mentioned, aside from Waldichuk and Medina, are expected to play this year. But yeah. So overall, not great in terms of a full-blown roster, but it's not the worst rebuilding team that I've seen either, right? There's some interesting names. There's some guys that could potentially pop here. But let's talk about, expectations here for this team. So last year, of course, they lost 102 games. They were 60-102. That was the second worst record in all of baseball last year. Obviously dead last in the AL West. So what do we think? They still a 100 loss team, or do you think we're going to see a little bit of an improvement here from Oakland?
I'm going to give them a 63-99. No, I think they're going to win around 70 games.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
I think 70 might be the ceiling,
Mhm.
but I think they're going to be somewhere between 68 and 72 would be my guess. Typically we like to put a 5 or 6 game range on there,
Yeah.
and that really depends on how quick of a start do they get off to. Are they in dead last by 20 games entering June? Then
Mhm.
they're probably going to be worse because they're going to start selling at that point. But if they're not the worst team we've ever seen, then I think they're probably going to roll into July, and at that point, I think the floodgates will open, and I'd be pretty shocked if Tony Kemp isn't traded for whatever you can get. He's in the last year of his club control. I think Blackburn probably gets moved, and
Mm.
a couple of these free agents that they brought in, they would probably get moved. And then at that point, who knows? Because they could be on a 75-win pace, and then after the deadline, all of a sudden, they're a 60-win team, and it's because they made all these moves. But I think they're decent. Not decent. Decent is 500. I think they are better than they were last year, but not very good.
I think they're like a 64, 65 win team, honestly. Like this is a bad roster overall.
I guess
And
I'm just the Jace Peterson believer out of us. Huh?
I guess so.
It's a good place to
So,
be. Feels right. Feels
all right,
right.
so to tie the Mariners into this whole thing, because we are a Mariners podcast after all,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not.
Are we?
Well, our backgrounds wouldn't say so, but yeah. Little inside joke. So which of these guys do you think the Mariners could target at the trade deadline this July when they're looking to add? I mean, we've talked about Seth Brown a lot, so we won't go over that whole thing again. Seth Brown's a fit, at least as of now. If the Mariners traded for him today or tomorrow, that would make a lot of sense. Don't think that's going to happen, but that would make a lot of sense. But outside of Brown, is there anyone on this roster that you think might appeal to the Mariners? Obviously, this is a lot of projecting and all that, but from what we know right now, and in terms of who might be available, anyone that comes to mind?
Jace Peterson.
Yeah.
Jace Peterson, Tony Kemp, some bench guys who you can play for a week if you need to, and yeah, but I think Brown is kind of the obvious one here. Aledmus Diaz, I could see maybe he hits lefties pretty well. We'll see how Gino looks. I mean, I don't think Gino's going to fall off a cliff, but I think there might be a little bit of regression. But overall, no. Aside from some potential bench guys, like I said, like maybe Laureano if you get really desperate, and Jared's just not hitting, and Pollock just can't play every day, then maybe Laureano makes some sense. But I think to me, it's like you mentioned, it's Brown is kind of the obvious one, and then maybe a Trevor May, maybe a Danny Jimenez, maybe a. I mean, I don't
Really
imagine
any of the bullpen arms if they're good,
right if they pop,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Zach Jackson, Trevor May, any of the bullpen guys make sense. It's hard for me to envision a scenario where somebody like Paul Blackburn makes sense, but maybe you never know.
Maybe.
It just feels like Seattle probably has 3 or 4 Blackburns, and then they would all be blocking Bryce Miller. So maybe Manny Pena, if you get kind of into the year and Murphy gets hurt or Cal gets hurt and the A's want to bring up Soderstrom, then maybe a guy like Manny Pena. But yeah, I think it's Brown is kind of the obvious one here, and then maybe a couple of the bullpen arms, but and everybody else will just be as role players with not obvious paths to everyday at bats.
Right. And obviously, this A's team has a lot of other things on its mind other than just what's happening this season. Obviously, the potential impending move to Vegas is kind of dominating the conversation around this ball club right now. So that's kind of what's at the forefront here. Not really what this team is going to do in 2023, because frankly, if this team sells or ends up moving to Vegas, there's a good chance that the way that the team is operated might change at least a little bit at that point. So who knows? This organization is one of the weirdest in baseball, obviously. So yeah. Again, I fully expect them to win like 64, 65 games, and once they get to the deadline and start selling pieces off, like you said, I think you covered all the bases here. Tony Kemp is someone that we've talked about a little bit. Jace Peterson could make some sense, especially if like Haggerty or Dylan Moore don't work out.
Right. And I mean, Kemp is going to go for Zach DeLoach.
Yeah, it's not going to cost you a lot to really get any of these guys except for Seth Brown. Really, that's about
if he repeats what he did in the second half.
Yeah. Or if you trade for him now, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the A's. We're going to be doing more of these previews this week and probably into next week. We're having to record some of these episodes ahead of time tomorrow or today for you guys, but tomorrow for us, Tuesday. We're going to be recording, I think, Friday's episode, and then we're going to take Wednesday off, or we're going to do a Wednesday show and take Friday off, or we're going to do a Wednesday and Friday show. I have an interview planned for Thursday with Alex Fast of Pitcher List, so that's going to be the Thursday show, barring any scheduling changes. So there's your heads up for you guys. But yeah, while Colby's on vacation, we kind of have to record ahead of time and do all this, and that's going to be happening here for the next few weeks as well, because I also am going to be traveling towards the end of this month as well, so we're going to be recording a lot ahead of time.
Right, I'll be in Arizona, so upload times kind of going to be up in the air. Maybe we get them up early, maybe we record the night before, and like it's just going to be a little bit varied. So. Unfortunately, for the next few weeks, things might be a little off, but hey, you know what? If you subscribe, you get notifications when we post videos or podcasts. So you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You just go ahead and subscribe to both the podcast and the YouTube channel, and you'll know when we post stuff. We're still going to post pretty much every day. It's just going to be the times that we do post are probably going to be a little bit up in the air on a day-to-day basis.
Or like yesterday for you guys, Monday, we have some technical issues as well. Things are going to get delayed even further. By the way, fingers crossed that this episode records properly.
If you're hearing this.
Yeah, it did. We're good. We're good to go. But yeah, subscribe and turn on alerts, and you'll be the first to know when our videos go up, and you'll also be halfway entered into our giveaway that we're doing for a couple of Mariners tickets. Again, giving away 2 Mariners main level tickets to one lucky listener. All you have to do is subscribe and then leave a comment on this episode or yesterday's episode or any of the episodes that we dropped this week. Leave a comment on all of them. Let us know which game that you would want to go to if you win. And that improves your odds if you leave a comment on each and every one of these episodes, because we're only going to pick one episode to choose a comment from, and then we're going to randomly pick a comment from that episode. So that's how it all works, and we're going to be doing that next week. Anyway, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnote, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you when we see you. Peace.